Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night, and we are here with another episode of the Obsidian Nights podcast, where we go through A Song of Ice and Fire, chapter by chapter, with a different guest each chapter. So if you want to be on Obsidian Nights, all you need to do is go on Twitter or Instagram and send a message to @Nim's Shadow, or you can join my Discord. The link will be in the description box, and you can also get on Obsidian Nights that way. So today I'm doing Eddard 12, and I am joined by Liv, all the way from New Zealand.
Hello.
Liv, would you like to tell the people who you are and where they can find you?
I don't have any sort of online channels in particular for anyone to look at, but I'm just here to talk about Game of Thrones and Ned in particular. That's me.
Awesome. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So this is one of my favorite Ned chapters, but I also think this is like the stupidest shit. This is the stupidest thing that Ned Stark could have fucking done.
Oh, hell yes. So he makes some really questionable choices throughout the story, but this chapter in particular, it's just like horrendous choice after horrendous choice. It's like, what are you doing?
Yes. So let's just jump right into the opening of the chapter. So the chapter opens up and it says, "Pain is a gift from the gods, Lord Eddard," Grand Maester Pycelle told him. "It means the bone is knitting, the flesh is healing itself. Be thankful." He says, "I will be thankful when my leg stops throbbing." So Ned Stark had gotten to the scuffle with Jaime Lannister. His leg is all messed up. Like, we're at the point where he's sent people to hunt down the Mountain or Tywin's dog, Tywin's men that like went to the Riverlands and busted things down. And Ned's been getting milk of the poppy, and he's been sleeping a lot. And Pycelle's kind of like, well, you need to sleep because that helps you heal. But like at the same time, I feel like Pycelle is trying to dampen Ned Stark. Like, yeah, he wants to heal him. Like, but at the same time, I feel like he wants Ned out of the way. So he's trying to keep him like doped up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Ned's already been on the path of, finding all of Robert's bastards and like going down that train. So for Pycelle, it's probably like a repetition of what Jon Arryn was doing, and to see Ned going down that same path is probably quite.
Yeah. And Pycelle is totally like House Lannister. Like the Grand Maester is supposed to serve the castle. So he's supposed to be loyal to Robert, but he's totally loyal to the Lannisters. And he tells Ned, like, there was a raven this morning. It was for the queen from her father. And I thought I should tell you because Lord Tywin is pissed off that you sent people after the mountain.
Yeah, understandably. Just a quick question. Do you think Pycelle knows about Cersei and Jaime? Like,
Yes.
he would be trying to keep their secret?
I think everyone knows, with the exception of Ned Stark. Every small council member knows. Like, I feel like Pycelle knows. I feel like Varys knows. Littlefinger knows. I also feel like Tywin knows. I feel like Tywin knows and is in denial and just turns the other cheek.
Right.
But I feel like he has to know.
Yeah. Like you say, even if he doesn't want to acknowledge it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's pretty obvious to people that have been in King's Landing for a long time, or that have been around Jaime and Cersei for a long time.
In that sense, Ned and Robert are kind of two peas in a pod. They're like, in a lot of ways, very similar characters. And this too. Neither of them know anything that's going on.
They don't. And it's sad. Like, it's sad because they're good. Well, I'm going to say Ned Stark is a good person. Like, he's a good person. He's a merciful man, an honorable man. And like, that shit has no place in the Game of Thrones. Like, no, it just doesn't, because you're putting yourself at a disadvantage when the people that you're opposing don't play by the same rules as you. So you're at it, like, he's been at a disadvantage since he got there.
Yeah, but the hardest part is he isn't consciously putting himself at a disadvantage. He just genuinely doesn't think that he could be disadvantaged, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I think Robert and Eddard are actually quite similar in that sense, because they kind of feel like their position will get them through and they'll be able to, you know, take control of a situation based on their title alone. And it's kind of not really how it works.
Yeah. Though, like, it just doesn't work like that. And like, even when Ned, like, Maester Pycelle is telling Ned about Tywin, Ned is kind of like nonchalant about that. Like, you know, let him write all the letters that he wants. Like,
yeah, let him be Roth.
Yeah, like, let him be. And I will say, like, it was a stroke of genius that Ned, like, the one smart thing Ned did was send Beric to the Riverlands under the king's banner. That would have been smart if Robert lived.
Yeah.
But Robert didn't live, and Ned never accounted for the fact that Robert might die.
Yeah.
So if Robert lived and the mountain attacks Beric, then while he's flying the king's banner, then that's an attack on the king, and Robert would love to go to war because he just loves war and battle. But at the same time, do you need to account for Robert maybe not coming back? Like, like, I think this is a show only line, but Littlefinger says it to Sansa, like, you need to fight every battle everywhere in your mind all the time. Which, that's true. Like, when you're playing a deadly game like the Game of Thrones, you need to think of multiple scenarios. And I don't think Ned ever had I'm not going to say the brain capacity to do that, but he never had I don't even know what you would call that. Like, he was just naive.
He wouldn't think about that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, like what you're saying, like, his position in the North, he would have never had to think about things like this.
No, because his orders would have just been followed, you know, as he spoke them, kind of.
Right. So I would say he kind of went to King's Landing with, like, this veil of privilege. Like, he's lived in the North, like, his orders have been followed. He was, you know, he's a high lord. He's the warden of the North. The Northerners are going to listen to what he says because he's the warden of the North. He's the Lord of Winterfell. He's Ned Stark. But in the South, so if you're taking that idea to the South, no.
How do you know?
They don't care that you're Lord Stark. Like, even in the last Ned chapter, the one prior to this one, like, they tell, like, the people that come to the court, these are people that have lived right around the Red Keep, like, not that far from the Red Keep. They think Ned is the king.
Yeah, they have no idea who he is.
They don't even know who Ned is. Don't even know who Robert is. So,
and
like,
the ones that do know really don't care. Like,
they don't
really.
So
even Varys, I mean, who claims to care? I mean, let's be real.
Varys doesn't care about anybody but Varys.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, it's like, you can't come thinking like you're this high lord and these people are going to give a fuck, because they don't even know you. Like, they don't even know the king. They don't even know what the king looks like. And
more importantly, like, they don't know the northern ways. They don't know why it's so important to you that XYZ happens, you know, in a certain way. it's so foreign to them. So like for you to come here and start, you know, talking all this, you know, big talk about like when he's on the throne and he's all like, you know, I believe the man who serves a sentence should swing the sword and all that. Like, that's all well and good, but this is not the life that everyone else here knows.
Yeah. It's sad because I feel like under different circumstances, Ned Stark is kind of what his morals is what it could have been. He could have been a good hand to a better king. But Robert kind of like left him out there to just do all his work. And he was he never had, like, Ned Stark, when he was in the crypts of Winterfell, when Robert offered him the position, Ned was doomed. Yeah. Ned was doomed. And it was like, and it's so like all those chapters of them traveling south, it's so dark. It's so gloomy. It's so like, it's, I don't even know how to explain it, but like the conversation with Robert starts in the crypts of Winterfell. And then like the next conversation he has with Robert is like in the Barrowlands. So it's like they're all discussing all of these Southern politics around the dead. And it's like total foreshadowing that they're both doomed.
Yeah. And it's all leading up to, you know, their final conversation on Robert's deathbed, you know, like,
good point.
But, what was I going to say? I thought of something while you were saying that, because I don't think Robert even really has a great grasp of what's going on around him. Like,
no, he doesn't. Because he's drunk. He's drunk half the time.
Well, yeah, there is that. But like, gosh, for someone like Robert, politics is going to be the last thing on his mind. You know, he doesn't care about. Well, he wouldn't even have the patience to think about any of that. But you know, when his fast forwarding a little bit, so spoilers, when Robert dies, you know, and he hands the kingdom over to Ned, essentially, you know, and he's talking about, oh, you'll rule now. Like, it's just complete lack of understanding about like any of the other players on the board, and just the assumption that they're just going to hand the regency over to Ned.
And it's crazy at the same time, because Robert has some kind of grasp on what's going on, because that's why he goes to Ned. And it's like, you know, half of these people are liars. The other half are flatterers and fools. Like, I need somebody I trust. Like, he feels that he's in danger. But yeah, I don't think he knows exactly how bad it is. Like, he doesn't know that when I sign this paper, that my wife is just going to rip it the fuck up.
Yeah. And actually, yeah, like you say, he feels threatened and all that. But actually assigning Ned to the position is essentially what gets him killed. It's Ned's meddling. Like, they already killed Robert.
Like, because I say it all the fucking time. You had your fucking brother right there, Stannis. You had Stannis right there.
Stannis would not have put up with any flatterers or fools.
No.
That would have been done.
What does he say when he's like in the Clash of Kings? He's like, I want to scour that court clean. Like, he wants to remove everybody off the small council. Like, the whole small council would have been flipped inside out.
Yes.
Like, the shit would have went down. And they didn't want that. You know, they didn't want that. Like, Cersei wanted Ned Stark to be hand because she knew that he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Yeah. Cersei wanted him to be hand. Littlefinger wanted him to be hand. Varys they all wanted him to be hand. They didn't want Stannis, just like they don't want Stannis to be king, because they know that bullshit that they're doing is over. If Stannis becomes king.
Yeah.
Or hand, for that matter.
At best, they're out of a job. At worst, they're dead.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's sad. So Pycelle eventually leaves the room with Ned, and Ned, you know, like he didn't want the milk of the poppy, but he drinks some wine, and even the wine, you know, clouds him a little bit, you know, dampens him a little bit, puts him, it's not on point about everything. But he talks about what would Jon Arryn do if he had this information? Like, how would he have done it? Like, had he lived long enough to tell of what he learned, to act on it? Like, what would his actions be? And he talks about, like, this is the sword that killed him. And before we get into, like, the sword that killed him and all of that shit, I wanted to talk about what he says about the innocence of a child. Like, he says, it was queer how sometimes a child's innocent eyes can see things that grown men are blind to. Someday, when Sansa was grown, he would have to tell her how she made it all come clear for him. He's not the least bit like that old drunken king, she had declared, angry and unknowing. And the simple truth of it had twisted inside him, cold as death. This was the sword that killed Jon Arryn, Ned thought then, and it will kill Robert as well. A slower death, but full as certain. Shattered legs may heal in time, but some betrayals fester and poison the soul. So. Ned, Sansa being the one to open Ned's eyes to it by saying that he isn't the least like that old drunken king. It's sad that Ned will never get to tell Sansa that she was the one. So, like, I feel like it would be good for Sansa if she knew that she was the one that, helped her father figure out what was really going on. But at the same time, it might make her sad because that's ultimately the reason that Ned dies.
Yeah, definitely. It would be easy to blame yourself for that.
Yeah, especially when she already probably has so much guilt for going to Cersei in the first place and saying,
absolutely.
But I think sent us away.
Yeah, this is literally your fault, Sansa. But I think it's also like not necessarily foreshadowing, but it's interesting that it's Sansa's perception of it that uncovers the truth, and it just kind of makes me think that later on in the story, she's going to be a more perceptive character, and you see that sort of, goes under Littlefinger's wing a little bit.
It's happening. Like, I give Sansa a lot of shit. Because I could not stand a Game of Thrones Sansa. I could not stand what they did to Sansa on the show. But in the books, like, you can see her being so fucking observant, like in the Vale. And like, just like her doing the whole, making the whole Knights of the Vale, like making Sweet Robin his own personal guard and things like that. And like really being motherly to Sweet Robin. Like, you can see her developing into a very observant character and a very smart character.
Yeah, definitely. And it is interesting to watch those characters who start off with a very Ned-like influence hanging over them, like all of the Stark siblings pretty much, and sort of see how they develop over time. Like, Rob definitely doesn't, because he stays in the north and he has the same influences basically. Whereas like Sansa, then her influences become Littlefinger and Cersei, and how she develops, like not necessarily away from that honorable sense, but like how it becomes incorporated into her new sort of way of thinking about the world. Sorry, that's a whole tangent in of itself. We're talking about Sansa now, but I just think it's interesting because with Ned, you don't obviously get a lot of that because his story is over pretty much as soon as it begins. But I think it's very easy to write off Ned as being like one of the more two-dimensional characters of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And I actually disagree with that. I think there's a lot more depth to him than what's portrayed.
Oh, a ton. Like, shout out to like Brennan Beefish and Emmett, Poor Quentin from Notacast. Like, they've done some stuff on Ned Stark that I really love. Because I do like quirky shit like Ned is stupid, Ned is dumb. Like, I do that. But like, if you really peel back the layers, there's so many layers to Ned Stark. And I think it was Poor Quentin who basically said, like, he's just this warrior that's haunted by like all these ghosts of his past, and like they go really in depth with it, and like can't recommend that podcast enough.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen that because I was looking for information on it because I'm having all these ideas and I'm thinking, gosh, has anyone else like talked about this, you know? And definitely like with his history and the war and the rebellion, and then and the Greyjoy rebellion, like he's seen
and how it
shit.
keeps like revisiting him throughout his chapters.
Keep
flashing back.
Yes, but only after he arrives at King's Landing does he start having those dreams, and only as this things start falling apart do they become more and more prevalent. So like,
and he feels like it's an omen. He feels like it's an omen, like,
and it is.
It's
like in the last chapter. I'm pretty sure it was at the start of the last chapter. He dreams about arriving at the Tower of Joy, where, you know, all of his men are bar Hal and Reed are killed, and then at the end of that chapter, he's in the streets and all of his men are killed there. You know, like it's a very direct parallel.
Very direct.
But back to the Tower of Joy for a second, because like this is one of the key things about Ned that I think people may not necessarily think about, is like the Tower of Joy is like a defining moment for Ned. I mean, that's pretty clear. Like his whole thing with Lyanna is just repeated time and time again, chapter after chapter. But like leading up to that, like he essentially started a war to save Lyanna, and you know, his father and brother were brutally murdered, like all the shit that went down, people died. Absolutely. But then the most traumatic part for me would be getting to the end of that and finding out that the whole rebellion was essentially built on a lie. Like Lyanna wasn't kidnapped, you know, like if you believe that, which I do. So like, and I think it's interesting with Ned how he is portrayed as this honorable character, so much so that it's like a parody of itself almost. Like in trying to do the right thing, he ends up fucking up the most shit, essentially. Like, I mean, he causes more destruction in Westeros, well, like as a result of his actions, than I think any other character in the story. And
it's not because he's bad; it's because he's good.
No, yeah, absolutely. There's nothing to fault there, but.
I mean, think about like what you're saying about the Tower of Joy and like all the trauma that happened in Ned Stark, and then getting to the Tower of Joy, the end of it, and finding out that it's all built on a lie. But not even like, it doesn't even stop there. Like he has to take Jon Snow back to Winterfell and sacrifice like his honor and say, you know, this is my son, even though it's not his son. And it's a reminder every day of everything that's happened.
Absolutely.
And he has to lie to his nephew. He has to lie to him. Like even to the point where when Jon goes to the Wall, Jon is like the rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
And you're letting
Ned can't even say anything. Yeah.
Can't say anything. And you're letting him swear an oath to give up all of that. So that's even traumatic in itself. And I think that's why he thinks about Jon Snow a lot when he's in King's Landing.
But also to that end, I feel like his honor is in some ways a coping mechanism. Like I think getting to the Tower of Joy, realizing all that would be enough. Like if you were somebody who believed that you were trying to do the right thing and, you know, all of that, that would be enough to like completely shatter your self-image. You'd be like having a existential crisis, like, gosh, who am I? You know, do I only destroy? Or, you know, it'd be pretty shattering, I would think. And so then it makes sense to me why Ned would, especially like you say with Jon hanging over him and all of that throughout his life, why he would then strive to be honorable in all of his actions, almost like atonement, like trying to make up for that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
Sense. That makes sense to me. But like for me, like when I think of Ned, I think of him as like this character, but at the same time, I think of Ned as a plot device. Like these things that happen to Ned have to happen in order for the story to unfold. Like Ned Stark, like he ultimately, he's doomed from the start. Like he has to die in order for his children to become who they are.
Yeah.
So he's doomed from the start. And I personally like Ned Stark. Like I love him because he is so honor bound. And even in the event that he has to do something that's not honorable, like he's choked up about it.
Yeah. And he tries to think of the best way to go about it, you know, causing the least amount of damage. But
and of course,
unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way.
I'm a Daenerys fan, so I love Ned. That Ned was like the only person besides Sir Barristan is like, I don't think you should kill this little girl.
Yeah,
like yeah. But one thing I wanted to talk about was it said this was the sword that killed Jon Arryn. Ned thought then, and it will kill Robert as well. But at the same time, he has this information. He doesn't think that this is the sword that will kill me.
No. Which is interesting.
Right.
You think that would be a logical flow on.
Yeah. Especially considering what he's going to do at the end of this chapter.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why he thinks this isn't the sword that's going to kill him. But even though, like, he knows, he says this is the sword that's going to kill Robert. He thinks it's going to kill Robert slowly. Like, he's going to find out about this. And the poison, it's just going to poison his soul. Like, some betrayals fester and poison the soul, he says. Now, I always have thought that Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, George took a lot from Norse mythology. And I feel like, have you ever heard the tale or read the tale about Jormungandr and Thor?
No, never heard of it.
Okay, so like during Ragnarok, Jormungandr, which is the three-headed serpent that circles the world, or the serpent that circles the world. No, I don't think it's three-headed. I can't remember.
Okay.
And then there's Thor, which Thor is just like Robert, has like the blonde hair wife, the
hammer. Yeah.
The storm, like there's something to do with lightning and thunder with Thor, which Robert's castle is Storm's End. But Thor defeats Jormungandr, the dragon or the sea serpent, defeats him, but dies from his venom, so dies from his poison. Anyway, so I've always felt like Rhaegar was like this dragon, this Jormungandr, and Robert is this Thor. And even though Robert killed Rhaegar, Robert still died from the poison of the betrayal. Because at the end of the day, Rhaegar was Robert's cousin. Robert and Rhaegar were close. Robert loved Lyanna. Rhaegar, like in Robert's mind, Rhaegar took her from me. She's dead. Like, this is a betrayal. And he literally dies like from that.
Yeah.
We can say that he died from a boar. We can say that he died from the Lannisters killing him, whatever. No, Robert died a long time ago. Robert died a long time ago. This shell of a man that we have that's drinking and whoring and is just miserable because, like, to be honest, Robert is miserable. Like, he tells Ned, like, basically, like, I've never felt so empty as, like, sitting on this fucking throne.
Yeah.
So,
and that is so sad. But I think that's a really interesting parallel, that story. I've never heard that before.
I did like my first ever YouTube video. Like, I do not fucking recommend watching it.
Okay.
I don't recommend it because
I'm going to find it.
I was shit. Like, my microphone was shit. I was shit at editing. Yeah, but that video, like, that's what made me want to like start doing A Song of Ice and Fire videos, because I was so into Norse mythology and there were so many parallels, like so many parallels, especially like with Jaime and Robert. Like, each character has a parallel in Norse myth, but like what George does is similar to what Tad Williams does, where he takes the Norse myths and like mixes them up and adds other shit to them. So like Bloodraven is definitely like a Loki type character, but also like an Odin. Like,
I see.
like the
one-eyed. Yeah. Okay, that's really cool because I know obviously George takes a lot of influence from all kinds of stuff. Like I've definitely heard you talk about, medieval wars in England and Europe.
Yes.
But you can't just rewrite history and put it down as your own story. You've got to have lots of influences coming together, so it's like it's your own thing.
That's one of the reasons I think it's so good.
Yeah. Because it parallels real life so much. But so it's really easy to get into, but like Ned is a keystone of that, because like I don't think it's a coincidence we start the story off at Winterfell with the Starks, because they're easily the most relatable family in the whole thing.
They are.
So like what you were saying before about Ned being a plot device, I think he very much is that. Like it's someone for us to root for, because I guess for most people that would be who we would most identify with, if it really came down to it on a real level.
George, in his original outline that leaked out, he basically said A Song of Ice and Fire was a coming of the age type of story. So it's basically, it's like not about the Starks, it's not about the Lannisters, it's not about the Targaryens, it's about these kids. It's about Bran and Jon and Robb and Sansa and Arya and Daenerys, because these are all kids. It's about them like growing up in the circumstances they're in and how they change the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like for that to happen, Ned has to die. And that's why he dies. And I feel like it's so impactful that he dies, because we all love him. I don't care. I don't care if you hate the Starks. I feel like if you started watching Game of Thrones, you were impacted by Ned Stark's death. Like you were I was impacted. I was like, oh my God, they killed Ned Stark. What the fuck? Like,
and I hadn't read the books at that point, but when I saw that, so I was like,
I didn't read the book. Yeah, I didn't read the books either. I didn't read the books either at that point. I didn't start reading the books till after season 3.
Same.
So I was like, when they were walking him up there, I was like, okay, so he's not going to die. Because at first, like, I thought he was going to die when he was fighting Jaime Lannister. And then when he lived, I was like, okay, so he's good. And then I was like, but he's the main character. Like, he's the main character. And like, they're not going to kill him. And then, shoot, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If you haven't read the books, you don't realize that there's actually quite a few main characters,
right? If you
just have their part to play.
Yes. So I was very shocked. But so Littlefinger comes in.
Yes, back to the story.
Yeah, because we're like, I'm off over here. So Littlefinger comes in. Basically, Ned's like, what do you think about this information? This is the book, or what does he say? This is the book that Jon Arryn died for. Does he say that in this chapter? Wait,
I'm just trying to find, because he comes in and they're just talking pleasantries. Basically, he's talking about lunch with Lady Tanda, and then talking about Ned's wound.
Yeah, and like, when will Robert come back? So it's just kind of like small talk. So basically, they had went out to find the White Heart, which is like some special thing, and then
is that a rabbit? I don't know. A rabbit type creature.
I feel like it's a white deer,
because
like an albino deer, but I could be wrong.
Well, that sounds way more logical, because I always pictured it as like a big rabbit, and I just like there's like 20 or so knights running out to kill this rabbit. It just always like, what's going on?
So it's just, anyway, they found the White Heart, it seems, or rather what remained of it. Some wolves found it first and left his grace scarcely more than a hoof and a horn. Robert was in a fury until he heard talk of some monstrous boar deeper in the forest that nothing would do, but he must have it. So Prince Joffrey has came back with the Royces and Balon Swan, and the Hound. So Ned is like asking about the Hound. Like the Hound concerns Ned. He's like, I was worried about Jamie, but like I'm also kind of worried about Sandor Clegane. Like, is he gonna pop off? I don't know.
Yeah, because now he knows, right, what Ned's done with sentencing Gregor to death.
Yeah, and we know that the Hound doesn't like his brother, but Littlefinger's like, Gregor is his to kill. Like he's his to hate. Like you can't do it. You better not do it. Like he's his to hate.
But I'm thinking about this hunting party, and surely, not the rabbit thing, something else. Surely Cersei must have already laid the plans to kill Robert at this point, because as far as like they wouldn't have sent a raven like, oh yeah, Ned's come to me saying this, so now you've got to kill Robert. Like that's not going to go on a raven. So the dominoes are already falling at this point.
I think she sent a rider or something.
Okay.
I think I'm not sure, but I find it odd that Joffrey came back before Robert when Joffrey loves killing shit.
Yeah.
So for Joffrey to come back and Robert to stay, like I feel like Cersei knows the shit's gonna go down and she doesn't want Joffrey there. So she could have already laid the plans because Lancel would have had to take this specific wine that he likes.
Yeah, they would have had to have that stocked up. Yeah.
Maybe she planned in advance for Joffrey to come back. But it's like, how do you know how long he's going to be gone? Like, how do you know he's not going to find the White Hart? How do you know he's going to get a boar?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all too many unknowns. There's almost no way you could... Yeah, you couldn't expect there would be a natural moment for Joffrey to then come back so that you could enact your plan. I don't know. See, this is why I don't think I would do very well in King's Landing either. Like, and I actually find Ned quite a triggering character because I think we all like to think that if we were going to go down to King's Landing, we'd be like Tyrion, like basically calling people out and, sorting out what's what. But actually, to be honest, I think I would make a lot of the same mistakes that Ned has made. I don't know. I just find that really triggering.
Yeah, like most of us would.
Yeah,
most of us would. We don't fucking know how to rule a kingdom.
No, I can't outthink Cersei, and I've read this chapter so many times.
So, Ned talks about like Robert coming back soon, and like Honor requiring him to tell Robert, and him arranging for Sansa and Arya to sail on the Wind Switch out of Braavos in 3 days. He says last night he had dreamt of Rhaegar's children. Lord Tywin had laid the bodies beneath the Iron Throne, wrapped in crimson cloaks of his house guard. That was clever of him. The blood did not show so badly against the red cloth. The little princess had been barefoot, still dressed in her bedgown, and the boy. Ned could not let that happen again. The realm could not withstand a second Mad King, another dance of blood and vengeance. He must find some way to save the children. So I think like this dream that Ned dreamt, he should have applied that shit to his own children.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, 2 children. Yep, like what Ned had. Like
right,
like your children there.
You have 2 children with you. The old gods are trying to tell you something. Like, get your fucking kids and go because you're going up against Tywin Lannister. Like,
yeah, don't sail in 3 days. Sail tonight. Like, how long does it take to put all of your belongings in a trunk? Seriously,
like. Get on your fucking horse and go to the Kingswood and tell Robert now. Like, he's so worried about other people. Like, he's worried about Cersei's children and not his own. And I don't want to say like it's egotistical because it's not really egotistical, but it's like this, he has like this idea, like this can't happen to me.
Yeah.
Like this
definitely.
This can't happen to me, but it's like you have 2 children with you and they're talking about 2 children and those 2 children were killed by Lannisters.
They were a prince and princess. Like your daughters are just, daughters of a lord. Like it can happen to anybody. But yeah, I mean, definitely George has said that, Ned's fatal flaw is that he can't abide the killing of or the harming of children or whatever it was, killing or harming, I can't remember. And yeah, I mean, that's where most of his mistakes come from, really.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So Ned basically is like, Robert's never going to forgive this. Like, Robert will not forgive this. So I'm going to have to do something. Like, he will kill them all. Like, he will kill all of them. But he knew that he had to tell him. So he was like, I'm in a rough spot. Like, what am I going to do? So he basically sends for Cersei to come meet him in the Godswood.
Yeah.
And this is where shit just gets right out stupid.
Yeah. This is where, like, literally anything else that you could have done, Ned, would have been better. Literally anything else.
Yes. So it says, she came to him at sunset as the clouds reddened above the walls and towers. She came alone as he had bid her. For once, she was dressed simply in leather boots and hunting greens. When she drew back the hood of her brown cloak, he saw the bruises where the king had struck her. The angry plum color had faded to yellow and the swelling was down, but there was no mistaking it for anything but what it was. Why here? Cersei Lannister asked as she stood over him. So the gods can see. She sat beside him on the grass. Her every move was graceful. Her curling blonde hair moved in the wind, and her eyes were green as the leaves of summer. It had been a long time since Ned Stark had seen her beauty, but he saw it now. I know the truth Jon Arryn died for, he told her. Do you? The queen watched his face, worry as a cat. Is that why you called me here, Lord Stark, to pose me riddles, or is your intent to seize me as your wife sees my brother? If you truly believe that, you would never have come. Ned touched her cheek gently. Has he done this before? Once or twice, she shielded away from his hand. Never on the face before. Jaime would have killed him, even if it meant his own life. Cersei looked at him defiantly. My brother is worth 100 of your friend. Your brother, Ned said, or your lover? Both. She did not flinch from the truth. That's why I love Cersei. Like, I love Cersei. Like, Cersei's an evil bitch, but she stands in her shit. Like, she stands in her shit. And another thing Ned Stark did that was totally wrong is he underestimated Cersei.
Yeah, I don't know why he did her. That. Well, maybe because
she's the
whole time in King's Landing seeing her get shut up by Robert, like whether he's hitting her or just telling her shut up, woman, like, so it'd be very easy for Ned to just think, oh, she's she's the submissive one in the relationship, or she's not, I
feel like a lot
of power.
Yeah. A lot of the women are looked at as, beneath us. Like Daenerys,
especially in that kind of society.
Yeah, in that society, that time, medieval times, women were for birthing children. So he's looking at Cersei, like, not undermining her. He's, what the fuck?
Underestimating.
Yeah. He's underestimating Cersei. Daenerys gets underestimated all the time. We see Sansa gets underestimated. Arya, like all the women are underestimated in the story, and this is a fatal mistake of Ned Stark, is to underestimate Cersei. But like even Cersei's own family underestimates her sometimes. So it's not stupidity that he did it. It's just like, how could, like, audacity, like, how could you?
And that, if nothing else, signs his death warrant, because like, even if he wasn't about to threaten her, like, she'd be like, how dare you? I just don't think she would take that slight lightly.
And she like pours it on. She's like, we are one person in two bodies. We share a womb together. He came into this world holding my foot. Our old maester said, when he is in me, I feel whole. And she smiles at him.
And I leave that paragraph thinking, like, I guess, like, okay, like, am I really, like, agreeing with you? I guess, I mean, logically, I get where you're coming from, but
ew.
Yeah, can you not do that though?
Right. So he's like, to her credit, when he asked about Bran, he's like, to her credit, she didn't look away. He saw us. You love your children, do you not? Robert had asked him the very same question the morning of the melee. He gave her the same answer, with all my heart. No less do I love mine. This is some R plus L equals J foreshadowing. So he says, Ned thought, if it came to that, the life of some child I did not know against Robb, Sansa, and Arya, and Bran, and Rickon, what would I do? So he omits Jon Snow.
Yeah, true.
And then he says, like, even more so, what would Catelyn do if it were Jon's life against the children of her body? He did not know. He prayed he never would. But when he thinks of his children, he thinks of Robb and Sansa and Arya and Bran and Rickon. So he omits Jon Snow. So omission kind of points to maybe Jon Snow's not his kid.
Not his kid. Yeah, that's a really interesting. And I actually did miss that on the first read through. But I think it's quite interesting that he approaches this whole conversation with so much empathy. Like he's essentially telling her to leave the city. But he's not trying to be a horrible person. He's actually trying to like spare her life, and he's trying to like get with, like she's literally or her and Jaime have injured and almost killed one of his children, and here he's going like, oh yeah, I guess, you know, if it were my children I would do the same, you know, like really. Yeah.
And it's interesting that like she's like, yeah, they're all Jaime's, thank God they're all Jaime's. And he asks her, you know, what did he do to make you hate him so much? And she's like, the night of our wedding feast, the first time we shared a bed, he called me by your sister's name. He was on top of me, in me, stinking of wine, and he whispered, Lyanna. And Ned like is thinking of the roses, and he like wants to cry. And he's like, I don't know which of you like I pity the most. And she's like, bitch, save your pity for yourself. I want none of it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Cersei. Like, okay.
I love her as a character. I could honestly talk about her for like 6 years. Just like,
yes.
Man, there's so much to her.
And like she kind of tries to entice him. It's like, you know, the realm needs a strong hand. Joffrey will not come of age for years. No one wants war. Like friends can turn into enemies. I swear to you, like you shall never regret it. Be kind to me and you won't regret it. And he's like, did you make the same offer to Jon Arryn? And she slapped him. And Ned's like, well, I'll wear it like a badge of honor, like mocking her. And I'm just like, okay, Ned, like this is getting a little, and she's like, you know, how dare you? Like, how dare you play the noble lord? Like you have a bastard of your own. I've seen him. Who was his mother, I wonder? Some Dornish peasant you raped while her holdfast burned, a whore, or was it the grieving sister, the Lady Ashara? And Cersei's like, how dare you be judgmental of me when you've done the same shit? And Ned's like, you know, I don't kill children. And you would do well to listen. And he's basically like, you know, run to your father, not to Casterly Rock. Like all of you need to get out of here. You need to go like take a shit for the free cities or like the Summer Isles or like even a shy somewhere. Like you need to go as far as the wind blows because Robert like is gonna find you. And she's like, you know, this is a bitter cup to drink. And he's like, it's not as bitter as the cup that your father gave Rhaegar's children.
He is savage in this part of the story.
Yeah.
Like telling it like it is.
I'm living for this Ned. Like, living for this Ned. And he's like, it doesn't matter where you go, or what you do, like Robert's wrath will follow you. And she stands up and she's like, and what of my wrath, Lord Stark? Her eyes searched his face. You should have taken the realm for yourself. It was there for the taking. Jaime told me how you found him on the Iron Throne the day King's Landing fell and made him yield it up. That was your moment. All you needed to do was climb those steps and sit. Such a sad mistake. I have made more mistakes than you can possibly imagine, Ned said, but that was not one of them. Oh, but it was, my lord, Cersei insisted. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. She turned up her hood to hide her swollen face and left him there in the dark beneath the oak, amidst the quiet of the godswood under the blue-black sky. The stars were coming out. So, like, that's the end of the chapter, but that was Ned Stark's biggest mistake, was letting Cersei know that he knew and he was going to tell Robert and telling her to run away. That was a huge mistake, and he underestimated her, and he never asks about Cersei's wrath. What of her wrath? You
he just takes this an empty threat.
Like, her brother pushed your son, a child, out of the window, and you think she's gonna just run away?
Yeah,
and go off.
You don't I said, he signs his own death warrant here, essentially. Like,
yeah,
and he doesn't even realize it. I mean, yeah.
And to be honest, like, Cersei doesn't want him to die because she knows, like, that she knows his death is gonna cause the War of Five Kings. Like, she doesn't know exactly the War of Five Kings, but she knows it's gonna cause a war. It's gonna cause an uprising, a rebellion in the north. Like, you killed their lord.
Which is probably why she tries to seduce him first, like, she's trying every trick in the book, basically. Yeah.
And even, like, when it comes down to his death, his actual death, spoilers, fast forwarding here.
Just to anyone who didn't know.
Yeah. She's not with that shit. She's really wanting him to take the black.
Yeah.
And go north. Joffrey kind of does that shit on his own.
Yeah.
So it's
because Joffrey doesn't understand. Yeah,
he don't know shit. And if he knows, he don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
he's a psychopath. He's a psychopath. So that's the chapter. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
All I want to say, just to close it off, is that Ned is, like, definitely a tragic character. Like, his whole storyline is it just leaves you with this feeling of sadness, like, why couldn't things have been different? And, we touched on that earlier, that things need to happen in a certain way to, progress the storyline of everyone else. But it doesn't mean that I don't really feel for Ned, because you can see what's happening even if he can't, and I mean, outside of the situation, Ned himself is just such a melancholy character. It's just all depression, really, with Ned. So yeah, it's tragedy.
It is. But this is I'm going to title this episode The Fatal Mistake, because I feel like this was the one. Like, he made a lot of mistakes, but this was the one.
And he throws away a lot of get out of jail free cards in the next chapter.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one is really the key.
Yes. But I want to thank you for coming on. This was great. You did awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. And thank you all for listening, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.